I was standing outside my son's house with a neatly wrapped gift and a card that read, "Happy 5th birthday, buddy. Love, Grandpa." But the door never opened for me. A text buzzed on my phone. "Dad, please don't come. We need things to be comfortable for Mom and her husband." That word, husband, hit harder than I expected. It wasn't about a cake or a party. It was about being replaced, about realizing in that moment that I was no longer part of the family I once built with every ounce of myself. I was the ghost outside the window. 30 years ago, I was celebrated. The man with the suit, the corner office, the deals. I was the provider. I missed birthdays, games, bedtime stories, but always told myself I'd make it up later. There was always a later. My ex-wife once begged me to come to Lucy's recital. I sent flowers. Brian used to wait by the window when I traveled. He stopped waiting. I thought money could fill the gaps. It didn't. And now, on the day I should have been beside my grandson blowing out candles, I was told to stay away. And yet, something changed that day. I caught a glimpse through the curtain, a little boy staring back at me, confused, curious. He didn't know my name, but I knew his heartbeat. That look, that tiny, innocent connection, ignited a spark I thought I'd lost forever. I wasn't ready to disappear. Not yet. Success used to taste like black coffee at 5 a.m., polished shoes, and 3 phone calls before sunrise. That's how my mornings began for over 2 decades. It wasn't always like that, though. There was a time I woke to the sound of my daughter Lucy's tiny feet tapping on the hardwood, her giggle the first win of my day. I'd scoop her up, make pancakes for Brian, and kiss Mary goodbye with a whispered promise that I'd be home for dinner. We had a life, simple, warm, and ordinary in the most beautiful way. I met Mary at Ohio State. She had freckles, wore cardigans, and loved quoting poetry out of nowhere. We married 2 weeks after graduation. I started as an analyst at a regional bank, making just enough to pay rent and sneak in cheap date nights. When we had Brian, I was still taking the bus to work, carrying dreams bigger than our apartment could hold. The offer to join a major investment bank in New York came when Lucy was 2. It was everything I had worked for. Status, bonuses, the big leagues. But I turned it down. "I want to be near the kids," I told Mary. She smiled like I'd just proposed again. For a moment, I believed I had made the right choice. 6 months later, the same offer came again, this time with double the salary and a relocation bonus. "Just 2 years," I told Mary. "Then we come back. I promise." She hesitated, but nodded. The way she looked at me, I think that's when the first crack began. The 2 years stretched into 5, then 10. My role expanded, and so did my absence. I started missing school plays, birthday parties, Sunday breakfasts. But I always compensated. I paid for private school, sent Mary flowers weekly, bought Brian the guitar he wanted, and Lucy a new laptop every time Apple released one. I told myself it balanced out. I told myself they understood. I remember Lucy's 8th birthday. I was in Hong Kong finalizing a deal. Mary video called me, and I watched my daughter blow out candles through a screen, pixelated and buffering. I said I'd make it up to her. I never did. Brian, once a boy who clung to my hand, began keeping his door shut. When he did speak, it was clipped, polite, distant. Mary stopped reminding me of events. She stopped expecting me to show. And I convinced myself that this was temporary, that I was building a future so solid they'd never have to worry again. Lucy turned 15 the year I became CEO. The celebration at the office was lavish. Champagne, applause, plaques with my name engraved in glass. I missed her party that night. A scheduling conflict, I said. She sent a text. Congrats, Dad. That was it. No emoji. No heart. Just words. A week later, I came home to find a small envelope in our mailbox. Inside was a letter from Lucy, handwritten in her looping teenage cursive. I didn't read it. I told myself I'd open it after dinner, after emails, after sleep. But I didn't. I placed it in the drawer by the bedside, beneath a stack of unread magazines. I didn't know that was her final attempt. The next morning, she avoided my gaze. At breakfast, she only spoke to Mary. Brian didn't even come downstairs. Mary looked tired, not physically, but emotionally, like a wall that had been rained on too long. She said nothing. Just poured coffee, sat across from me, and stared into her cup like it held answers I'd never bothered to seek. Still, I left for work in a crisp suit, waved, and told them I loved them. No one replied. That silence, it wasn't loud, but it echoed. I used to think I was sacrificing for them, that every missed dinner was another brick in our fortress of security. But bricks, when stacked without care, don't build homes. They build walls. There was no screaming, no slamming doors or angry accusations, just a shift, a quiet, deliberate rearranging of the emotional furniture. One morning, I noticed Mary no longer made coffee for two. Mine wasn't on the counter anymore. Her kisses faded into nods. Her texts got shorter. Okay? Fine. Sure. Words that once held warmth became placeholders. The kids had stopped asking if I'd be home for dinner. Brian started saying, Mom and I are going out, instead of we're going out. Lucy stopped leaving her sketchbooks on the dining table. Her laughter, once so constant it echoed through the halls, had grown scarce. Then came Sam. At first he was just a friend from Mary's yoga class. I'd hear his name now and then. Sam helped her fix the fence. Sam watched a movie with the kids when I had to travel again. One weekend I called home during a layover in Denver. Brian answered. I asked him what they were up to. Just hanging out with Dad Sam, I thought I misheard. You mean, Mom's friend Sam? A pause. Yeah, him. He didn't correct himself. When I came home that Monday, Sam's name was on a note Mary had left. Sam helped install the bookshelves. They look great. That same week, Lucy transferred to a new school. I didn't know until I saw the school name on a tuition invoice. When I asked Mary, she said simply, she wanted a fresh start. No explanation, no conversation. Like I wasn't part of that decision. Maybe I wasn't. The house had grown quieter, but not emptier. The silence wasn't space. It was exclusion. Everything was still happening, just not with me in it. One Thursday, I came home early. A rare gap in my schedule, a canceled investor dinner. I didn't tell anyone I was coming back. I thought maybe I'd surprise them. Mary, Brian, Lucy. Maybe they'd be glad. The garage light was on. Laughter trickled from the kitchen. I stepped in quietly, eager, a little nervous. They were all there. Mary plating dinner, Brian showing something on his phone, Lucy giggling beside him, and Sam sitting at my seat, his arm draped casually behind Lucy's chair, a bottle of wine half poured. No one looked up. I stood there for a full minute. Not one person turned around. I left the room without saying a word. The next day, I opened my laptop at work and stared at my calendar. A blank Friday 3 weeks ahead caught my eye. Lucy's art showcase was that evening. I remembered Mary mentioning it in passing. I booked a flight, reserved a hotel, even bought flowers. Yellow tulips, her favorite. 3 days before the trip, I got an invitation to speak at an international finance summit in Geneva. The same night, global exposure, legacy-level opportunity. I canceled the trip. I sent the flowers anyway. Lucy never mentioned them. A month later, Mary asked if we could talk. We sat across from each other in the living room. I expected tension, confrontation. She asked if I'd consider couples therapy. I laughed. "I'm not broken," I said. "We're just stretched. It'll settle." Her face didn't change. "I don't think it will, Jack." Still, I brushed it off. "We just need a vacation. Maybe Hawaii. You remember Maui? We loved it there." "We haven't loved anything together in years," she replied. But I didn't hear her. I was already pulling up flight options on my phone. That weekend, I increased Lucy's allowance and ordered Brian the latest gaming setup. I transferred money into Mary's account for a spa weekend. I thought, if I made life easier, they'd soften. If I just gave enough, they'd feel loved. They didn't. Because money never spoke the language they needed to hear. Then came the envelope. It sat on the kitchen counter. Mary's handwriting. I opened it, expecting a note, a list, maybe even a small thank you. It was divorce papers. My hands shook. "I'm sorry," she said, appearing behind me. "I waited. I really did." I looked at her like a man who'd just woken up in a house he didn't recognize. "You can't wait another year?" I asked, stunned. Mary didn't flinch. "I can't wait another 10. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday morning. Thick cardstock with gold trim and a cartoon lion wearing a party hat. Brian's son, my grandson, was turning 1. Inside was the expected invite. Balloons, cupcakes, backyard games. But near the bottom, in smaller print, sat a line that made my hands go cold. "Opening words will be given by Grandpa Sam." Grandpa Sam. Not step-grandpa, not Mom's husband. No, just Grandpa. I stared at it for an hour. The absurdity, the pain, the sheer slap in the face of it all. I could have thrown it out. Instead, I took it as a challenge. A door left cracked open. Maybe they wanted me to fight. Maybe it was a test, to see if I still cared enough to show up. So I did. I dressed carefully that morning. Blazer, clean shave, new shoes. I bought a toy fire truck, wrapped it myself, even wrote a card in thick blue marker. To my favorite little man. Love, Grandpa Jack. I rehearsed what I might say if Brian looked at me with softness, if Lucy smiled, if Mary nodded, if they let me in. But the gate didn't swing open for possibilities. It slammed shut with 4 words. "Dad, you can't come." Brian stood in the doorway, arms crossed, voice tight. Behind him, music floated out, laughter, children running. I caught a glimpse of red balloons bobbing in the yard. "I just want to give him his gift," I said. Brian's eyes hardened. "We've talked about this." "Brian," I took a step forward. He stepped in front of me. "Don't make a scene, please." From inside, a toddler's cry pierced the air. My heart jumped. My grandson? I looked past Brian, just in time to see the boy in Mary's arms. He was pointing in my direction, confused. "Who's that?" I heard him ask. Mary didn't answer. She turned away. The child cried louder. Brian glared. "Now you've upset him." "He doesn't even know who I am," I whispered. "No, he doesn't." The words cut deeper than any shout. I left the toy at the doorstep, walked back to my car like a man walking away from a grave he didn't know he'd already dug. That night, I drank more than I had in years. The apartment was too quiet, too white. I tried turning on the TV, but the noise felt insulting. At 1 a.m., I opened Lucy's letter from years ago. The ink was faded, but the words hit like they were written that morning. I know you love us, Dad, but it's hard to feel it when you're never here. The next day, I called Lucy. She didn't answer. I called again. She picked up on the third try. Dad? Hey, sweetheart. A long pause. Why now? I'm trying. She didn't say anything. I messed up, I added. You always loved work more than us, she said, her voice not angry, just hollow. No. I loved you so much it scared me. I thought success would protect you. We didn't need protection. We needed a dad. The line went quiet. Then she hung up. I didn't call back. A week passed, then another. One afternoon, I stopped by Mary's to drop off a box of old photos I'd found. Brian's baseball games, Lucy in her Halloween costumes, all the life I'd missed. Mary met me at the door. She didn't invite me in. I never stopped loving you, I said quietly. She sighed. Jack, love stopped being enough. I nodded. Then, from behind her, Brian appeared. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. I used to pray every night that you'd cancel your trips, he said, eyes fixed on me. Just once. That you'd pick me. I opened my mouth. Don't, he said. Don't explain it. Mary looked at him, then at me. We've learned to live without you. We've healed around the hole. I'm still here, I whispered. But we're not waiting anymore, she said. I nodded again. Because what else could I do? I walked away. There were no more tears left, just a strange emptiness. Not the sharp pain of heartbreak, something deeper. A quiet absence, like a room where the lights have been off so long you forget what color looks like. The resignation letter was short. 3 sentences, no grand statements. I didn't call a press conference or give a farewell speech. After 32 years, I left the only world I'd ever known with nothing but a cardboard box of desk photos and a hollowed-out nameplate. I sold the house 2 weeks later, the one with the granite kitchen I never cooked in, the home theater I never used, the office with floor-to-ceiling windows where I sat late at night, convincing myself I was doing it all for the family. I moved into a modest condo 20 minutes from Brian's place. No doorman, no rooftop views, just quiet. I bought a second-hand dining table, a coffee maker, and for the first time in years, an oven I planned to use. I learned how to make cake from scratch, not some box mix with store-bought icing, but real cake, eggs, butter, vanilla bean. I ruined the first 3 attempts. The 4th was barely edible, but the fifth was good enough. I wrapped it, taped a note on top. Happy birthday. Love, Grandpa Jack. And left it on their porch early in the morning. I never rang the bell, just placed it there and walked away. Later that afternoon, I parked across the street, watched the door open. Brian stepped out, saw the box, looked around. He didn't smile, but he didn't throw it away either. I started showing up to events I had no right to attend. Lucy's spring art showcase, Brian's community baseball coaching sessions, school fairs, PTA meetings. I never spoke, never announced myself. I stayed behind the crowd, sometimes behind trees. At Lucy's school festival, I watched her laugh with friends. I almost turned away, afraid to intrude. But then, something small tugged at me. A boy, my grandson, sitting on the grass, scribbling with crayons. I watched him from a distance for nearly an hour. 2 days later, a folded paper appeared in my mailbox. No envelope, just childish scrawl on the outside. To Grandpa. So inside was a drawing, clumsy, sweet, a tree, a swing, a little boy, and behind the tree, a man, mostly hidden. In big block letters, I saw you. I held that picture for hours. I didn't cry, not then, but something inside me softened like thawing ice. I began writing letters, not to Mary or Brian or Lucy, to my grandson, one every day. Today I remembered the time your dad tried to build a kite with me. It never flew, but we laughed so hard we forgot to care. I don't know your favorite color yet, but I hope one day you'll tell me. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that take years to fix. I hope you'll give me the time to try. I slipped them into the mailbox near their house at dawn. Never signed with more than your grandpa. I didn't expect responses. I just wanted him to know I was still trying to be someone worth knowing. One Thursday morning, I saw Lucy across the parking lot. She was holding one of the letters. I hadn't seen her in weeks. She looked thinner, tired. She walked over slowly. No smile, no anger. "Did you write this?" she asked, holding up the folded paper. I nodded. Her eyes welled up. She bit her lip. "He keeps them in a shoebox," she said, "under his bed." I didn't know what to say. She looked away. I read them too. The silence between us was heavy, but it wasn't empty. "I think," she said quietly, "you're really trying." I exhaled. "I am." She looked at me, uncertain, like someone standing near a fire, unsure whether it would warm or burn. "I'm taking him to the park on Saturday," she said. "We'll be there at 10. Then she walked away. Saturday came. I arrived early, sat on a bench beneath the trees. The swing from his drawing hung nearby. At 10 o'clock sharp, Lucy appeared with him. They didn't speak. They just sat next to me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a stranger. I didn't feel like a man looking through a window at a life he couldn't reach. I was part of the frame again. It started with a spilled cup of juice. I was helping Lucy set up a picnic at the park. Peanut butter sandwiches, apple slices, juice boxes. I reached for a napkin, knocked over the drink, and orange liquid spread across the blanket like a little sunburst. My grandson stared, wide-eyed, then burst into laughter. "You're clumsy like Grandpa Sam," he said. I froze. Then he added, "But Mommy says he only acts like that when he's nervous." I looked at him. He tilted his head. "Are you nervous, Grandpa?" The word hung there. "Did you just call me?" He nodded, then reached for the napkin and helped clean up. That night, I didn't sleep. Not out of worry, but from something close to wonder. I kept replaying that moment, the tone of his voice, the ease with which he said it, like he'd been practicing it in secret. Brian replied to my next text. Just one word. "Thanks." Then a week later, "He liked the book you gave him." Then, "You free this Saturday?" Tiny steps, one word at a time. But to me, they were miles. We started having quiet breakfasts. Nothing heavy, no old wounds. Just eggs, toast, and updates about his job, the neighborhood, his latest hobby. For the first time in decades, I was learning about my son as a man. One afternoon, I picked my grandson up from school. Lucy had a late meeting, and Brian asked if I'd mind. I waited near the gate, hands sweaty. He came out slower than usual, dragging his backpack, quiet. On the way home, he stared out the window. I asked if everything was okay. "They make fun of me," he said softly. "Who?" "The big kids." "For what?" He shrugged. "For not having a real grandpa." I gripped the steering wheel, my throat tightened. "What do you mean?" "They said Grandpa Sam isn't blood, that my real grandpa didn't want me." I pulled over, took a breath, then told him a story. About when I was 8, and a boy at school had shoved me into a locker. How I cried in the bathroom. How I thought being small made me less. But how my grandfather, his great-great-grandfather, sat me down and told me, being strong isn't about fists. It's about standing tall when others want you to shrink. I told him I had shrunk for too long, that I was learning to stand tall again. He listened, then reached over and took my hand. Will you come with me tomorrow? Where? To school. That next morning I walked beside him through the gates. Kids watched. He didn't flinch. At recess, one of the older boys pointed. Is that your dad? He teased. My grandson grinned. That's my grandpa. He's tougher than he looks. He reached for my hand again, and I realized I was needed, not tolerated, not forgiven out of pity, but needed. We began building new traditions. Sunday BBQs in Brian's backyard. I'd grill hot dogs while Lucy and Mary made lemonade. My grandson and I had a handshake. 3 claps and a finger snap. He got it wrong every time. We laughed every time. I started picking him up from school twice a week. We'd get ice cream, talk about dinosaurs, make paper planes. At night, he asked for stories, not fairy tales, real ones. Stories about his dad as a kid, about mistakes I'd made, regrets, lessons. He listened with wide eyes, and I told the truth. Even Mary began to thaw. One evening I pulled up to find her and Lucy on the porch. I waved. Mary smiled, just for a second, but it was real. Later that night, Brian called. We're doing a party for him next weekend, he said. Small, just us. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Of course. He wants you to be there. I'd like that. A pause. He wants you to light the candles. I stopped breathing for a moment. Did he say that? Yeah, Brian said. He asked if his real grandpa could help with the cake. That Saturday, I stood beside him at the table. He grinned, frosting on his nose. Grandpa, you do it with me, okay? I lit the candles. All 5 of them. We blew them out together. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt like I belonged in the picture. Not as a ghost in the background, but right there, center frame. The first sentence took a week to write. I sat at the same small desk every morning, staring at the blinking cursor on my laptop. Coffee in hand, memories flooding. Where do you begin when you've missed most of it? How do you tell a story that's half silence? I titled the document The Empty Chair at the Table. It was, at first, just for me. A journal. A record. But slowly, word by word, it became something more. A confession. A letter to every man who ever told himself just one more meeting. Every father who believed that presence could be postponed. Every version of me in 1,000 offices, with pictures of their children framed but faded. I wrote about the birthdays I missed, how I always meant to be there, how I thought showing up with a toy after the party was enough. I wrote about the silence at dinner tables, the unread letters, the moment I stood on my son's porch and heard the words, "He doesn't know who you are." And I wrote about what came after, the slow repair, the tiny victories. The word grandpa said for the first time like it had always been true. The book was published a year later, quietly, no bestseller lists, but it found its way into churches, counseling centers, fathers groups. I began getting emails, men who hadn't spoken to their kids in years, men who had just become fathers and were terrified of becoming me. That's how I found the group. Or rather, how it found me. A small community center once a week. We called it Second Chances. Men in all stages of fatherhood, divorced, widowed, estranged, overwhelmed. We didn't offer solutions, just stories, truths, attempts. I wasn't a therapist. I didn't pretend to be one. I just told my story. What I did wrong, what I still struggle with. and what I wish someone had told me before the first missed recital. One evening, a young man asked, "When did you know it was too late?" I looked at him for a long time before answering. It's never too late to start, but sometimes it's too late to undo. So start now. He cried. I cried too. Because that was the thing. I still carried the weight, the regrets, but I carried them alongside new joys. Brian had changed too. I noticed it one Thursday afternoon when I came to pick up my grandson. Brian was sitting on the porch, his work phone upside down on the table, ignored. He looked relaxed, present. "I clock out at 5, he said casually. "I even turned off notifications on weekends." I smiled. "You always hated structure." "Now I love it," he said, "especially when it gives me time with him." We didn't say it, but we both knew. This was the ripple. My failure hadn't ended the legacy. It had redirected it. Lucy, too, found her rhythm again. She took up teaching, art therapy for children. She told me once that watching me change gave her hope that people could grow in ways we never expect. That broken doesn't have to mean useless. Then came the invitation, a white envelope with the school's crest. Inside, a note. We would be honored if Jack Nolan would give the closing remarks at our graduation ceremony, my grandson's elementary school. I called Brian. "Are you sure?" He's the one who asked. I stood on that stage weeks later, heart pounding in front of rows of folding chairs and proud families. My grandson sat in the front row, dressed in a too-big blazer, shoes swinging off the floor. He waved when I looked his way. I cleared my throat and leaned into the microphone. I used to believe success was a title on a door, a name in bold letters. I believed I could build a legacy with contracts and corner offices, but I was wrong. Silence. The good kind. I missed things. First steps, first goals, the chance to be a daily presence. I made choices I can't undo, but I was given a chance to start again. And that is what this legacy is now. Not perfection, but presence. I paused. I chose wrong. But because of family, I got to choose again. Applause came slowly, then warmly. I stepped off stage feeling lighter. At the end of the ceremony, my grandson ran to me. He had something wrapped in crinkled paper. "Don't open it until you get home," he said, grinning. I nodded. Back at the condo, I sat in the quiet and carefully peeled away the tape. Inside was a wooden frame, handmade, rough around the edges, and inside it, a photo. Me and him standing side by side at the park, arms around each other, laughing. Below it, scrawled in marker, "Now Grandpa's not behind the tree anymore." I held the frame to my chest. He had seen me, not as I was, not as I used to be, but as I chose to be. And that, finally, was enough.